All right, today we're unpacking a truly landmark legal case, one where a prime minister's incredible power went head-to-head with the very soul of a constitution. Believe me, this is way more than just a history lesson. It's a high-stakes political drama about the absolute limits of power.
So let's just dive right into the event that kicked this whole thing off. Picture this. The leader of the world's largest democracy, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, has her election victory completely thrown out by a court. I mean, what a stunning move.
Right away, you're probably asking, wait, how can a court even do that? How can the judiciary have that much power over a democratic election? And maybe more importantly, what happens when a government really doesn't like the answer to that question?
Well, the government's reaction was, to put it mildly, swift and incredibly audacious. They didn't just appeal the court's decision. Oh no, they decided to try and rewrite the entire rulebook.
And they did this with something called the 39th Amendment. Its goal was simple and very specific: to build a legal fortress around the prime minister to shield that one office from any kind of judicial review.
And this, right here, just lays bare how radical this change was. You go from a system where all elections are accountable to the courts to a system where one specific election, the prime minister's, is completely untouchable. That's a massive shift in the balance of power.
So this all boiled down to one massive question. It set the stage for this monumental showdown in the Supreme Court, a real constitutional battle that was going to define the relationship between the government and the courts for decades to come.
And the court's answer? Well, it was all going to hinge on this powerful and pretty new legal idea, a kind of shield for the Constitution itself, known as the Basic Structure Doctrine.
Okay, so what in the world is this doctrine? Think of it like this. A constitution is like a building. You can redecorate, you can paint the walls, you can change the furniture, but you can't just knock down the main load-bearing walls without the whole building collapsing. This doctrine says the same thing applies to a constitution.
And here are some of those load-bearing walls we're talking about. Things like the rule of law, the supremacy of the Constitution itself, and, this is the big one for our story, judicial scrutiny and free and fair elections. These are the absolute fundamentals, the non-negotiables.
Now we get to the climax. You have to remember, the political atmosphere at this time was unbelievably tense. This is right on the edge of a nationwide state of emergency being declared. So as this doctrine was put to the test for the very first time, pretty much the entire country was holding its breath.
So the Supreme Court laid out its logic, and it was crystal clear. It said, look, Parliament, you absolutely have the power to amend the Constitution, but there's a line. And by getting rid of judicial scrutiny, this amendment wasn't just redecorating, it was taking a sledgehammer to one of those load-bearing walls. The conclusion was pretty inescapable. And so, the verdict came down. The court declared that key part of the 39th Amendment was void, that it was unconstitutional because it violated the basic structure. The government's attempt to put the prime minister above the law had failed. This line from the court's judgment just says it all, doesn't it? It cuts right to the chase, sending this incredibly powerful message that in a democracy, no one, not even the most powerful person in the country, is above the law. So what's the big deal? What's the lasting legacy of this incredible legal fight? Why are we still talking about it all these years later?
Well, for starters, it was a huge first. This was the moment that the Basic Structure Doctrine went from being just a theory in a law book to a real, powerful tool that could be used. And this idea of an unamendable core is something that democracies all over the world grapple with, establishing a precedent that echoed far beyond India's borders.
But maybe the most important thing is that this ruling really cemented the judiciary's role as the final guardian of the Constitution. It sent a clear signal. Parliament can change the laws, sure, but it cannot destroy the fundamental identity of the Constitution. The court stood firm.
So, when you boil it all down, the takeaways are pretty clear. This case proved that democratic principles, like accountability, are stronger than any one person or office. It showed that a constitution isn't just a piece of paper. It's a living framework with a soul that has to be protected.
And that leaves us with this profound, timeless question, doesn't it? A question that every single democracy has to keep asking itself over and over again. Where do you draw that ultimate line that power cannot cross? And who has the courage to stand up and defend it?